right, hi everybody. So today we're going to talk a bit about how to do baby sign language. So keeping in mind that babies and preverbal toddlers, they communicate primarily through crying and whining, as well as other things like eye contact, pointing, reaching. There are a lot of different ways that babies can communicate with us, even if they can't talk. But oftentimes these are things that we might not necessarily think of as being, highly desirable. Like nobody wants to be that parent with the kid who's whining and crying, because it is, however, a very effective and quick means for them to get their needs met, right? You're much more likely to respond to a crying infant quite quickly than one who is, happily sitting away, or staying quiet to themselves, right? So when we think about how to decrease different kinds of tantrum or problem behavior, we think of increasing functional forms of communication. So for many kids, that can mean, teaching things like baby sign language. And, there's really not a whole lot of right or wrong ways to do this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's something that, approximations can also be meaningful, as long as they are meaningful to your child and you, if that's who's primarily using these means of communication. Now, for example, one of the most common signs that's taught first for the preverbal infant or toddler, and when I say infant or toddler, it's something where most kids over the age of like 10 months, this could be a target for teaching. Under that, you're not going to have as much success just because there have to be some foundational skills that they learn first. So for instance, like they need to be able to sit on their own, and they need to kind of be able to attend to you and interact a little bit more with you. So typically, I would suggest starting this around 10 months. But a target that I really liked, that I started with my little one, was more. So it's a really easy one to teach because it's something that you already know that they tend to want more of. It's something that you generally know what your child really is into and what they want and when they want it, because they might get really excited. They might really be able to communicate that to you, even if it's not something that's necessarily as clear as saying, oh, I want that one, right? This is really good teaching opportunity to use in natural play, also during meal or snack time. So if you have something that they're playing with and they need your help with, or to access more of it, this is going to be a good learning opportunity for you. So I like to do this one in particular with bubbles, or with snacks, where I intentionally will give them a little portion to start with, and then when it's become apparent they want more of it, then what you do is you kind of do hand over hand. You bring their hands together, more, you say more, and then you give them access to whatever it is they want, whether it's a snack, or you blow more bubbles, or you give them the toy that they wanted. Now, another really common early target for, baby sign language is all done. I particularly like this one because, for meal times and things like that, oftentimes if they don't want it, it's on the floor. So teaching all done can be really effective. I like to teach all done like this. There are some other ways with American Sign Language to teach all done, but for me, I find that one to be most effective. And the interesting thing about all done is what's actually reinforcing that behavior that makes that behavior happen more is actually the removal of the undesired stimulus, rather. So, that food that they don't want being there, having that taken away is actually what's desired, as opposed to giving them something that they desire, which is what we see with when you're teaching more. They want more of something, so you give them access to something, whereas when you're saying all done, you're removing a situation that they don't want. It's positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, if to get super nerdy on you. Another one that I really like is teaching tap to open. So for example, if there's a toy or some sort of food item that requires adult help to open, and then you open it for them and you give it to them. And again, you're doing hand over hand for all of this, and eventually you will kind of fade those physical prompts over time. But most neurotypically developing kids will pick this up really quickly. Again, you practice it, and you have these different learning opportunities throughout the day. And if you're teaching this to them, they will eventually learn that. Now, in addition to some of these basic signs that we discussed today, another thing that I really like to do is to allow children to make choices, because that can also help decrease tantrum behaviors, right? Because it's not that you're making the choices, you're giving them a little bit of independence with regard to age-appropriate choices that they can make for things like snacks or toys. So for example, having, what do you want to drink? choose, and then they reach towards what they want. They might try to grab it. That's okay too. And then you give it to them, whichever one it is that they want. Now, sometimes I like to do this, starting between a highly preferred and a highly non-preferred thing, because, chances are they might not, well, actually, this could probably be preferred for some kids, but, something that's maybe, less preferred, highly preferred, so then reliably what they're choosing. Because if you give them two things that they might really like, it's going to be harder for them to choose what they want and to choose reliably. So kind of also keeping that in mind when you're teaching them how to make choices is, starting with something that's less preferred, having them, choose something that's more preferred, and then that way, eventually you can get down to, well, two things that are kind of similarly preferred, but I actually want this one today, and it becomes more of an actual preference. This also provides a really good opportunity for you to teach, not a choice or not available, because it's also really important skill for, kids to learn when something is really not a choice for them. So, that's not a choice for now, make a different choice. Those are really important sayings that we use in my household that help to kind of improve, predictability, right? And anytime you improve any sort of structure, predictability, routine, you're going to see some of those tantrum behaviors sort of decrease in frequency and severity. You're not going to be able to avoid them entirely, but through a combination of things like some antecedent behavioral strategies, these functional communication strategies, we can hopefully decrease some of those tantrum behaviors and get your kids communicating more effectively as well, which kind of helps everything. All right, well, thanks so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more content.